Hello and welcome to the International Language Coaching Association. My name is Gabriela Kovac and I will be in conversation with Anesh Daya, who is an edupreneur, as we know, and he's the founder and CEO of On the Spot Language. And this has an outside-in program which equips English language learners with the communication and life tools needed to break down traditional learning barriers, which is a very important thing. It's an innovative and award-winning program, which I guess he will be talking about today. And it teaches English language immersion by taking the classroom outside. So that would be exciting to explore. And he's also a language disruptor. So that's also something that I hope we'll be hearing a bit about. So over to you, Anesh, and thank you very much for your time. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, and thank you so much for having me, Gabriela. This is an honor to be interviewed by yourself and an esteemed colleague. And I'm just in utter gratitude for all the great work you and Carrie and the whole ILCA Foundation are doing to really help bring a voice for us all to really just, share our passions and what we love to do. And yeah, I never meant to be an edupreneur or a disruptive educator. This all just like divine guidance that have kind of led me to doing what I'm doing with passion, purpose, and meaning. And I really kind of just fell into it all.
I see. Okay. And so how did this come? I mean, this whole language coaching journey, how did this start for you?
I appreciate you asking that. And it's what we're here to talk about. I mean, I remember when I was 22 years old on a plane going to Taiwan, realizing, wait, why am I going here? What am I doing? I don't know anything about the language or the culture. I learned my numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9on the airplane. When I practiced with everybody on the airplane, and I was so excited, and I felt, yes, I'm ready to go. And I arrive and I get to the baggage claim. When someone asks me, 你是哪里来的? 你是哪里来的? I'm like, I just said the number 2. It was literally at that moment, Gabriela, that I realized that simply learning my numbers 1 to 10 was not going to let me survive in this new country and culture, let alone thrive. And so every day after that, I just made it a point to learn 2 functional real life sentences that I could use, like, well, I'm starving, like I need to eat, or, I didn't know about the food. So I'm like, what language can I get 2 cheeseburgers, no pickles, and a Coke, no ice? You go to that familiarity of McDonald's, and go, how do I say that in Mandarin? Oh, 我要2个起司汉堡，不要3个1个可乐，不要冰块.
Okay.
But
Sounds
I
good.
learned, and so right, yeah, well, not after 2 weeks of eating McDonald's every day, and you're like, okay, I got to start ordering some local food like 牛肉面 or 虾仁蛋炒饭, like some fried rice or other local dishes. So, it came to basically a year, just a year and a half in Taiwan, to the point where I was actually featured on TV on a top 10 countdown show of top 10 most interesting things that happened in Taiwan. My life was featured as number 7. Oh. And they called me Taike, the foreigner who became Taiwanese. I dressed like the locals. I spoke like the locals. The idiomatic expressions I used was like, Li jia ba boy, which means like, have you eaten? Which is a Taiwanese way of saying, hello, how are you? And so by the time I left, I'm like, I could functionally use this language and had this whole cultural understanding. I always say culture comes before the language. Mm-hmm. And it just helped me connect with the locals. And when I came back to Toronto, and I have a background in multimedia, I was a multimedia specialist in the past life, or before starting my English language journey. And then I got a job at a language school, and then I got laid off after being there for 5 years as a head teacher. Why? Because I didn't have a university degree.
Oops.
And I had a T-cell certificate, I had a 2-year multimedia diploma, but here I am as a head teacher, and oh, sorry, we need to let you go because Languages Canada says you need a degree. I'm like, so suddenly I'm not qualified?
Right.
And again, like most entrepreneurs, like you kind of fall into it, like, uh-oh, what am I doing now? Oh no. And then I'm like, well, what do I know? I know the frustration that my learners felt being in the classroom. And once they stepped outside the comforts of a classroom, they were kind of deer in headlights. They would freeze.
Right.
And suddenly they're like, Anish, someone said head straight and hang a left. What exactly does head mean? Oh, head just means go. What does hang mean? I go, it means turn. They go, oh, I didn't learn that in my class. And I was like, oh, head straight, hang a left at the second set of lights. Anish, what's satellites? No, set of lights, but nobody talks like that. They're like, I heard satellites. I'm like, yeah, satellites. I'm like, and so I'm like, wait a minute. How did I learn the language? Maybe I could maybe teach others how I learned.
Right.
So from a learner, what would I want? Because I love language learning. I go, well, I wouldn't want a classroom. I need to make the city our classroom. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be a language coach, I don't want to teach like 20 students. I only want a maximum of 3, because then there can be accountability. They can work as a group together, and I can handle 3.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, which I suddenly had to become, because I'm like, I'm not what do I know about business? I'm a teacher, right?
Okay.
I was like, oh, I got to do taxes and I got to make invoices and charge. Oh my goodness. How do you do all this? And, I ended up figuring it all out as we do. But as a business owner, I want to provide the best value for my clients and my learners, because I know what I would want as a student. I know what I want as a language coach. I don't want more than 3 students.
Right.
And as a business owner, I just want to give the most value. So we would take them for meals and go to the CN Tower. And it's like a fully like an all-inclusive resort kind of program. It's like and we've never had more than 3 students in each one of our classes that run 2 hours a day. And fast forward, here we are 12 years later into it. We've won best.
Running.
We still running. And I appreciate you mentioning that, because I've seen 23 schools in Toronto close.
Yeah.
And when you're bricks and mortar and you're kind of doing the same thing everyone else is doing, you got to stand out. Like, what's your niche or your niche? And if you're constantly providing value and you're constantly innovating, it speaks volumes, because the learners appreciate that. And so we've been voted, best ESL program in Toronto for 2 years. And then most recently, as I'm honored to share, we were awarded with top 50 organizations in education, which was recently, this conference was held in Las Vegas, which I couldn't attend, but attended virtually. But it was nice to get recognized for social impact, innovation, market demand, future readiness. I'm like, all of these things that totally speak to who I am. And Mike, not like, your curriculum is, it's nothing like, you've had 1 million students, that's why you're vote. No, it's these metrics. I'm like, yeah, that feels right. And so it's nice when these team of researchers kind of said, this is why, and they graded our program. And it's like, thank you.
Okay. And have you, can I ask a sly question here? Have you received your diploma since then?
My university degree? No, I have a degree in edupreneurship. I have a degree in resiliency. I have a degree in life. And at the end of the day, and I don't speak negatively, this has just been my own journey and how I've gotten to where I've gotten to, because it's all based on my own lived experiences, right? So, and it was interesting. It was one of my previous coaches, Luke. He's like, you're really like a coach, the way you kind of approach your program. Like, And I said, well, you used to be a tennis coach, right? And I go, yeah. So you like to be outside, and you're really like a Tony Robbins of motivating students and encouraging them. And you always lead by example because you model the language for them and show them how to do it. And you're like, then
Yeah.
you kind of drill in them, and you kind of get them that routine is the mother of skill. And let's build in these good routines. Like, you're like a language coach. I go, huh, I never thought about that word before. Interesting.
Mm, mm,
He just started calling me a language coach
uh-huh.
for years. And I'm just like, I guess I could call myself that. Yeah, that sounds, because I'm not a teacher. I guess I'm a coach. And this is my own definition of a language coach in my own head that kind of came organically based on who I am as a human and my
Okay.
tennis coaching. And then I reached out.
I mean, sorry, one of the most famous coaches, Tim Galloway, he originally was tennis coach, and he built the inner game of tennis, which is about the mental journey that you need to overcome your own challenges, which are inside, your inner critic, etc., and you have to move forward with that. And so there's huge big parallel in the coaching industry with what you have yourself recognized, that you can transfer those skills into language teaching, language coaching, calling it language coaching and doing it. So yeah, that's a huge big step. Yeah.
You're right on point, because the mindset is everything, is how you approach the language, and,
Right.
how do you get over these language barriers and these preconceived notions of how it's been previously drilled into your way you've been learning English. It's like, wait a
It
minute.
has to be perfect, right?
And I spend half of my time helping students unlearn.
Mm. And
you
then
know
relearn. Yeah.
Learn,
Learn,
exactly.
unlearn, relearn. So those are the 3 steps. Yeah.
So no, I haven't gotten my diploma, but I've gotten so much education. I always say you can learn something from every person you meet, and I've just learned so much from surrounding myself and leveling up my own community. And part of that has been, had I not, started this disruptive education conference in 2018 and 2019,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have met Judy Thompson. I
Could
just
connect it up.
researched.
Yeah.
And so I looked her up, and I said, oh, and I said, what do you think about my program? She's like, well, it's about bloody time someone does something like this. She goes, Anish, did you know that there's this guy, Jason West, who kind of had an English out there program? I'm like, what? Someone else was doing what I'm doing? This is amazing. And I reached out to him. He's like, dude, I'm like, brother, this is amazing. And then, from that, and finding people who advocate for what you're doing, and
Right. Right. Yeah.
everything that you guys do is building and supporting a
Mm.
community of like-minded, passionate, language coaches.
Right.
And you guys have done such a brilliant job of doing that. And had I not, gotten on that call with Carrie and then said, you know what, you guys got to meet Judy. And then Judy came on board to ILCA. And, this is how networking and community is built. And you guys do such a great job of that.
Thank you. Well, it's about, finding the people who you think are doing something very similar. Maybe it looks different, but in reality, it's very, very similar, because the core values, you mentioned values earlier, the core values are there. And we're addressing things maybe from a slightly different approach, but it's the basics, the fundamentals are always there. So that's a big thing. Moving on a little bit to what it means, you mentioned that you've got a lot of certificates in life and things around that. What does it mean for you to be an edupreneur? So, I mean, if it was a one sentence summary, what would that?
The flexibility to continuously innovate.
Mm.
Every year I've listened, to the point, I mean, prior to COVID, we embedded podcasting within my program. That, like, every Friday we would put our students on our On the Spotter podcast, to the point after a program, they're grabbing the mic from me and say, I want to talk. And they're like,
Wow.
And so constantly being able to innovate based on my learners' feedback. Anish, what about this? Or what about this? And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Right. Okay. And constantly just adding new things, trying new things. And if it sticks and it works, then we keep it.
So it's very much something which I think is a core ILCA value or a core language coaching value, is that it's learner led, right? So you're following the lead of the learner, yeah.
100%. If I think about how and when I started my program, and I've only learned to build and grow as an edupreneur and as a language coach, and even as a person, I've learned so much from my learners. They've helped guide me through their own eyes and what they see and experience. I'm like,
Sure.
you know what? I am not your teacher. Actually, every single person you meet outside is now your new teacher.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like,
it's a different perspective for them also, isn't it? To start thinking with this different, more open mindset.
yeah. And setting that intention for the day is like, I'm going to have so many great conversations today. I'm excited, like adding things like complimenting that's built into our program. I really like your frames. I really like your necklace, Gabrielle. You mind if I ask where you got it? Was it pricey? Was it on sale? I really like the color. It really shines. And like, oh, I got it at, and oh, sorry, I just got in from Japan. Oh, you're from Japan. My brother's sister's cousin was teaching it on. Suddenly they forgot how they started the conversation. But the
Right.
power of complimenting someone. And I go, but why, Anesh? I go, not just for English, but it's good to make other people feel good. It's
Sure.
good to spread human kindness, which is why we built gratitude into our program. We start our day with, what are you grateful for?
Well, that's a mindfulness approach, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
being present with that positivity.
Yeah, and
Wow.
having daily affirmations, building, I'm strong enough and good enough, and doggone it, my English is getting better and better every day. And they say it every day. They believe it.
Sure. Yeah. Fake it till you make it. Even
And removing some of these limiting beliefs that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's so
Absolutely.
core
Yes.
to what you preach about all the time. So
Yeah. I mean, I see it with my clients when I work in a corporate environment, more with multinational company managers, leaders, and for them, because they're so focused on what expectations are put on them, that's a huge big burden to be carrying around. And when they kind of let go of that, okay, but what do you want? What is it that you want to reach? How can you align the organizational values with your own goals? And that's always a breakthrough moment for them. And it's all learner led, as you said, and they learn to be more confident because they let go of a lot of things, the perfectionism, the coming up with all kinds of excuses why they're not good enough. And I say, trust me, you're good enough, but you've got to believe it, and that's the coaching journey actually for them.
absolutely. And our clients feed off of our motivation and our guidance, and just knowing that you have that support throughout their own journey, whatever goals everyone, which is why we all take a customized, tailored approach for each one of our clients, but with the core values of language coaching behind it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you have to have a kind of framework. It's not just about, oh, let's have a good conversation and try to use the target language. That isn't necessarily coaching. It can be a part of it, but there's a bit more to coaching than just having a good conversation. That's a good conversation. That's not coaching, right? Yeah, absolutely. And so what kind of projects are you working on at the moment?
So thank you for asking that. I'm very excited that I've been asked to be part of a book called The New Paradigm of Education. I've been asked to write a chapter to kind of share part of my story, and within that, how I've become, how I'm doing what I'm doing, and share a few of my own student stories within that. But also more recently, I've been really, in the last couple of years, the people who really need my program the most are these newcomers, or the refugees, or the immigrants to the country. And I'm like, and everyone keeps saying, Anish, it's them that really need this immersive, integrative program, because they're stuck in these traditional government run classrooms learning this is a pen. and they're comfortable in their own communities, which you can do in Toronto. You can find your community in your language. I'm like, so I create a whole language settlement program,
Right. Okay.
which is geared towards helping newcomers and refugees. And we're going to be pitching that to governmental organizations and hopefully spread it across Canada at some point.
Cool. Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So it basically, it means that you're going to be taking immersion word for word. So you're out on the street, so to say, and you're getting the learners to interact socially, culturally, and benefiting from these interactions so that it can help build their own confidence, because they're getting immediate feedback, right? So if they buy a cheeseburger without pickles, then the reward is that they can eat that hamburger the way they like it, right? So that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say we're building autonomous global citizens, you know,
Right.
whether you're here, you're going to travel the world, you're going to have the confidence to say a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet.
Oh, that's nice. Yes. Yeah.
And
Okay.
every person you meet could be an opportunity. I've had students meet the partners of their life by, you know, using a quote or asking people or telling a joke. And these are all things that are built into our program, you know.
Okay.
And we've had students get jobs or get box seats at the Toronto Raptors basketball game simply just by starting that conversation and engaging people, you know. And it's a numbers game. The more people you talk to, the more things you can learn, and the more
Okay.
confidence you build.
Right. Okay. Okay. And what are the future plans? What's going on here?
Yeah. So when I think about the future of on the spot language and where I'd like to get the business to is when I think about my legacy and what do I want to leave behind,
Oh,
and
okay.
I think about really, like I said, disruption, but really reforming the way language is learned when someone, you know, decides to enter or immigrate or integrate or get into a new culture in
Right.
country, whether I'm coming to going to Budapest or whether I'm going to Taiwan, you know, you can still take these core principles of on the spot language and language coaching, but with a different cultural approach,
Sure.
you know, which is different because every culture is different. And so I really hope not just to be able to spread this across Canada and possibly, I'm in the midst of creating a my own language coaching on the spot language certification program so
Mm.
that someone else can learn, how can I make my city my classroom? How can I take this outside in on the spot language approach?
I
And
love that. That could be a great slogan, you know, my city, my classroom, or my city, your classroom. You know, I think you've got a winner there. I love that.
and to really empower frustrated ESL learners. So you know what, ESL, there's no money to be made. Well, you know what? I'm going to prove and show to you that with this methodology and this
Mm.
outside in approach, by making any city your classroom,
Right.
you can actually make a living doing this and doing what I do.
Great. Great. I'll do Budapest. Okay. So I'm good for that.
I would, and it would just make language learning so much more exciting and fun. And just knowing that our students don't always have to come to Toronto, they can
Sure.
go to Vancouver or Seattle or Boston or New York or London
Yeah.
or Sydney, Australia. You know, why should it be limited? We can only come to Toronto. I've had students fly here from Vancouver
Right.
just to take my program because it wasn't in Vancouver. So that's what I would love to take it. And you know, if anyone is ever interested in getting an on the spot language, you know, becoming on the spot language certified, stay
Absolutely.
tuned.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's been the most exciting or most fascinating thing on this edupreneur journey for you?
Great question. I would say the most exciting thing has been, I don't want to sound cheesy and saying it's just seeing my students grow after the program and seeing how they've been able to apply and go on to such great things and making English part of their world and their lives, to the point where I have now students, Gabriella, saying, I'm running 3 classes right now with my previous students and their children, doing online language coaching. And they're building daily language, like, okay, kids, time to get up, time to eat breakfast. Okay, kids, time to wash your hands. Like, they're building all of these sentences that, they can use at home with their kids, and not even using it in their own language. And so being able to see how my students have transformed has just been, and because as language coaches, they become like lifelong friends as well, because we get pretty intimate with a lot of our clients. And so
it's an intimate process. You get
yeah,
into each other's heads, don't you? I mean, you can't really avoid it, but not in the psychologist way,
right.
but just, talking about plans, ideas, what's going on, how they can focus better, things like that, right?
And I still have students remembering specific sentences they learned and used in stories they had, having been on the streets of Toronto. And they're like, I remember I talked to the subway bus, the transportation bus driver, and then he ended up giving me his hat because I took the same bus route, and I told him I'm going back to Taiwan. He gave me his hat, and he's like, hey, I want you to have this token of souvenirs. Like, token? What do you mean by token? It's like, I just remember token of souvenirs. Like, but these stories, life is a series of stories and memories, and
everyone has their own narrative, right? And how they approach that narrative, what you do with that narrative kind of defines you as a person, right? Yeah. So that was very deep. Yes.
there you go. So thank you. And thank you for having me on here to share a little bit about my journey. And
absolutely. And what's your final message to other edupreneurs out there? What should they do? What should they not do?
That's a whole nother podcast or video, but
I mean, it's another 1 hour story, I know, but I mean, in a very,
I would say, if you're constantly leading with passion, purpose, and meaning, and you just like, I honestly feel since I started on the spot language, I've never worked a day in my life. I actually looked forward to Mondays and going out and meeting my students at a different look. I'm like, this is going to be so much fun. So when you're kind of leading every day like that, and my daughter lives and breathes my program. She draws my logo in class. Like, it's just part of our whole ecosystem here at home.
Ingrained.
And so, yeah, it's ingrained, and just, I never feel like I'm working when I'm doing this. And so I'm excited when the borders open up again and students can come back. And
come again. Okay. So the message is that you have to be a part of what you're doing in a very, I don't know, in a way that you feel passionate about it, and you really feel that you are one with what you were doing. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And like, everyone can have different ideas, but it's not really about ideas. It's about making ideas happen, right? Like implementing, doing things. And one last thing I would say, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. And I think that's something you speak to, because you build lots of doors and create lots of opportunities for yourself and ILCA. And so congratulations for you guys for really living and breathing that analogy.
All right. Okay. And thank you to you, Anesh, also for taking the time to, giving us a glimpse of what it's like to be, really walking the talk, so to say. So thank you very much. So I think big congratulations to the award, to the upcoming book contribution, and all the great projects that you have. This has been Gabriela Kovac for the International Language Coaching Association. If you're interested in how to become an ILCA certified language coach, go onto our website, internationallanguagecoaching.com, and I'm sure you're going to find something, a workshop, some membership programs that you are very happy to join, and we'd love to get in touch with you. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So yeah, I think I haven't left anything out. So yeah, looking forward to the future. Wonderful. Thank you very much.